Richard Rumelt, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Whitney.
Now, when it comes to being strategic in business, what are many getting wrong?
Most companies, what they get wrong about strategy is they treat it as an activity about the far future. They treat it as a long list of all the things that are going on in the world and which ones and all the different options they might take. But you have to pare it down to what you're actually going to do. And because they don't do that, they will often say, oh, there's a big gap between strategy and execution. Now, there isn't really a gap. What they've got is a bad strategy.
You argue that a coherent strategy can oftentimes amount to competitive advantage. It appears on the face of it to be quite common sense. So why is that such a mystery?
Well, that's a good question. The thing about strategy is it's surprising when we see it. We don't expect strategy. We expect large organizations, governments, to pursue multiple conflicting goals that don't add up, to try to punch the ticket of all stakeholders. That's what we expect. And when an organization doesn't do it, when it takes this off the table, and drives through to, and we say, oh my God, that's surprising. They actually have a strategy. You know, that's what appalls everybody about Apple, because it's not a particularly well-managed firm, but the ferocity of its focus. And just look at its product line. It has one phone. And look at the competing product lines. They're all over the place. And so this idea of not doing everything, but doing something with great force and great skill, wow, that's strategy.
Well, that's an interesting point that you mentioned, Apple, because I did want to talk about them. This is a company that, was on the brink of extinction and then basically, pulled itself out. It was not only able to innovate, but it was also to ride the wave of change. What did they do differently?
Well, when Steve Jobs took over in 1996, the second time he was involved in the company, it was 2 months from bankruptcy. He was encouraged by Wall Street to do a deal. Sell Apple to Sony, sell it to IBM, sell it to somebody. The tech people thought, well, he was going to invent something, voice recognition, which still isn't quite there, and so on. And he didn't do any of that. What he did was Business 101, which was surprising because no one thought of him as an astute business person. And he cut the 15 models they had down to one. He dropped all the printers and peripherals. He got rid of half their software engineers. He got rid of half their hardware engineers. He moved all the manufacturing to Taiwan. He did what needed to be done, and he did it with force and total cohesion. He cut the company back to a core that could survive.
Jobs continued to work on increasing Apple's profitability. To help meet this goal, he terminated several projects in March of 1998. For the next few months, other employees were afraid to ride in the elevator with Jobs, for fear that they would not have a job by the end of the ride. In reality, Jobs rarely summarily dismissed personnel, but it was enough that the rest of the employees were nervous.
No one expected Steve Jobs to act in this way. Steve Jobs didn't have a reputation as a strategy person or as a manager. And to take hold of this company and do what was necessary, to do what professional managers hadn't done for 2 or 3 years, to cut the clutter, to cut the company back to a core that could survive rather than spend more money on expansion at that moment, was very surprising coming from this guy in his background. And it's the moment in which he grew up.
In addition to those measures, Jobs changed the licensing program for Macintosh clones that made it too expensive for others to continue to produce.
A year later, I remember I was up there and I talked to him and I said, well, Steve, you've saved Apple. It's no longer about to go bankrupt, but you still only have a 4.5% market share. And the network externalities here are so strong that you're really not going to go and defeat the Wintel standard. So what's the long-term objective here? Where are you going with this? And he didn't disagree with my criticism or my analysis. He just leaned back in his chair and he gave this sort of Cheshire cat smile and he said, I'm going to wait for the next big thing.